Welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Gottron. I'm the Managing Director for the AI Institute for Societal Decision Making here. We're really thrilled to be here at Navajo Technical University today for this critical discussion. And start out, really thrilled to, again, be here and build on this relationship that we have with Navajo Technical University. For those who are in the room, there are note cards, there are swag. So make sure, if you have any questions for us later in the panel, during the panel sessions, any concerns, topics you want to discuss, please write those down on the note cards, and we'll see if we can gather those during the break. So for today, just want to outline kind of the goals for what we're going to be discussing here. First, we'll kind of establish some quick background on AI, as well as our AI Institute, which Navajo Tech is a core partner and a core part of. We're going to do some sharing about research projects at NTU and AI-SDM. So we'll be hearing from some students, from some faculty in our institute. We're going to explore the implementation of some of our educational modules, particularly through our AI user course that is being offered through the Institute. And also hoping that we identify some key research areas going forward, as well as potential issues in pitfalls. And so throughout the day, I really want to encourage discussion. So for folks who are joining us on Zoom, please feel free to put comments in the chat, and we'll take note of those. And folks here in person, please feel free to interrupt and have this be a dialogue. And by all means, this is a great opportunity to network both during the event and afterwards during at lunch, and we'll be around here at NTU today as well. So really, really high level overview of the AI Institutes. They were born out of the strategic plan that came from the National Science and Technology Council that were really answering a call for long-term investments in responsible AI research and foundational AI capabilities, as well as for developing effective methods for human AI collaboration. Big part of what we're doing is to develop a strategic workforce in AI R&D and expand partnerships through these initiatives. So there are currently 29 of these National AI Research Institutes. AI-SDM is just one. So I'll tell you a little bit about our institute as well. We are actually part of the 2023 cohort. So we're currently in the third year of existence in our institute. I have some images there of our director and our co-director from CMU, Dr. Arti Singh and Dr. Cody Gonzalez. And just kind of looking at the institute really quickly, you can see who some of the core partners are on our grant, including Harvard, Howard, Navajo Technical University, and many others. We have great students, great faculty and staff that are part of our institute that really span machine learning, robotics, social and decision sciences, statistics, philosophy, and social sciences. And in terms of research direction, AI-SDM really brings together AI and social sciences researchers to develop human-centric AI for societal good that leverages the power of data and operationalizes an improved understanding of human decision-making. So we're working to develop human-centric AI for societal good in a couple of really critical domains in society: public health and disaster management. So we chose those areas to focus on because those are typically domains where you have complex, often life-saving decisions made under dynamic and uncertain scenarios, where you often have these types of polycentric decisions, lots of data. How do we make sense of all of that? And so a couple of example projects that you may even hear about today is using AI to help with allocating resources, whether it's before, during, or after a natural disaster like a hurricane or a flooding event, or before, during, or after a public health crisis like the pandemic. So we We're also developing training tools, for example, for disaster managers. We're also using AI to help customize and target messaging during disasters and public health crises as well. So we have a number of partners that we're working with in this space and really trying to deploy these AI solutions in ways that are fair, ethical, and responsible. So again, there's a lot of research efforts going on at the Institute, but given that I just have 10 minutes, I'm going to leave it at that for now. I also want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the non-research efforts at the Institute, which are going to be represented in our programming today. There's many ways that students, administrators, and staff can interact with AI-SDM. And so while the graphic here shows these things like education, workforce development, knowledge transfer, and broadening participation around the periphery, they're actually quite central to our identity as an institute. So lots of text on this slide, but let me give you kind of the high points. On the left side, you can see we're developing a ton of degrees, programs, educational modules at all levels, everything from undergraduate, community college courses, graduate courses as well. The key theme here is that so much of what we do bridges these fields of AI and machine learning and humanities and the social sciences. So that's really reflected in a lot of our programming. I really want to highlight the high school educator workshop, which has been a major success through 2 years. This is a week-long paid professional development activity for teachers in all disciplines at the high school level, not just for CS or technical educators, again, really trying to reach folks from many different disciplines. And as you'll see on the next slide, we typically have applicants and attendees from a really diverse geographical spread across the US. And again, very interdisciplinary representation there as well. And particularly want to note that about 1/3 of the teachers that attend our workshop each year are typically from this area of the country, New Mexico, Arizona, and in particular, Gallup-McKinley High School is well represented, or Gallup-McKinley School District, I should say, is well represented here in this workshop. And we'll hear later today on one of the modules that was developed specifically for this workshop. We'll hear from Roy Raphael on a really cool AI machine learning tool that he's been working to develop. Also want to highlight the AI user course for community colleges. We're going to have a great panel later this morning. We have these great modules that have been created, co-design workshops, and that program is currently being piloted as well. I want to also touch on broadening participation efforts. So we firmly believe in creating AI pathways for all. So you can see with a couple of our signature programs that I mentioned on the previous slide, our educator workshop and the AI user course really focused on reaching broad spectrums of the country, reaching particularly, you see these focuses around some of our sub-award sites, folks that are part of the Institute. We're also going to hear a little bit about, in our keynote, the civic science effort led by Robin Murphy and her students at Texas A&M, where we're able to work with high school students and have them annotate the largest annotated disaster drone data set that exists. And even as recently as yesterday, we were working with some students from Crown Point High School here in New Mexico on an annotation activity. And I just want to put this out there for any folks who are either a part of our institute or interested in learning more about our institute. We have a ton of networking and professional development activities. We connect students to each other. We have student social, structured networking activities, as well as seminars, reading groups, research meetings that are open for folks in the Institute. So if you're interested in learning more, I have some contact information on the next slide. I also want to highlight our public-facing podcast that's run by undergraduate and high school students as well. And I actually have a flyer available here. Come on in, hey Cajun. So please feel free to check that out as well. And a big part of our knowledge transfer activities are not only transferring knowledge to the community within AI-SDM, but also the general public outside of AI-SDM and communities of practice, particularly in domains of disaster management and public health. So we have, we are typically featured in a lot of like news articles. We have a strong social media presence and also work to disseminate knowledge through public workshops, through libraries as well. So this is the slide I promised you. So for those who are online, there's a number of ways that you can reach out to us and learn more about AI-SDM. But for those who are here in person as well, there's also a number of resources available here as well. So I'm going to leave it at that. Happy to talk to folks over lunch, but I want to make sure we don't fall behind schedule here. So what I'm going to do at this point is introduce our next speaker, and let me see. There she is. Hi, Rebecca. So I'm going to introduce Rebecca Nugent, Dr. Rebecca Nugent, who is the head of statistics and data science here at Carnegie Mellon, actually, and also our education and workforce development lead. So let me see if I can, Rebecca, if you just give me 1 second, I will make sure that you are shown on our screen here.
Perfection. Thank you. And also let me know if you can see the slides.
Yeah, give me 1 sec. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
of course.
drag this over. Okay. I think we're good to go. Go ahead, Rebecca.
All right. Thank you so much, Norm. Appreciate it. Thank you very much to the Navajo Tech University for hosting us for this forum. My apologies that I wasn't able to be there in person. Our department, the Department of Statistics and Data Science at Carnegie Mellon, is in the midst of turning 60. And so we're having kind of a set of anniversary events and sort of big lectures, et cetera. And one of them was last night. And so I was unable to make the travel arrangements work that I could be there this morning. So thank you so much for the opportunity, though, to connect with you all. Norm and I thought that this part it's really more getting started with AI, that we wanted to not so much walk through like equations or technical details, but kind of more just talking about AI, some of the use cases, the types of issues and problems we're seeing in order to kind of help set the stage for a dialogue for the rest of the forum. So we'll just get started. For our friends online, please feel free to put questions in the chat. And Parker, if I miss some of them, do please flag me and let me know. But otherwise, let's take off and get started. So when we think about data science and AI, honestly, we think about it as it's just a way to collect information and make decisions about the world around us through complex technologies. So for example, the picture, we think about the movies, right? My mother, who's a retired middle school English teacher, thinks that I, a statistician and data scientist, live in the Matrix. This is fantastic for our relationship, so I let her think that. But, she thinks of it as like, we're surrounded by data. We're moving through space, collecting information and doing all kinds of fun sci-fi things with it. Sorry, I had been muted and now I'm being unmuted. Can you hear me okay? Can I get a check?
Yep.
All right, fabulous. Thank you, Norm. So in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we saw examples of AI in things like Jarvis, which was the artificial intelligence that Tony Stark used to help support him building his technology, who then turned into kind of its own character. But really what it boils down to is we're extracting value from data to solve real world problems, right? And so no matter how you're engaging with data technology or anyone, it's not, we may not be building robots necessarily or using some of the most technical tools, but we're going to have to learn to interpret, work with these types of data tech and AI tools, and be able to interpret the results and communicate to others. So that's a lot of what we spend time focusing on. So for example, we already use AI and data science every day in our day-to-day lives, right? We might use one of the voice to text tools or voice search, AccuWeather, and I noticed that it's warm and sunny where you are. That is not exactly what's happening over here in Pittsburgh. So I am excited for you all in your warm weather. AccuWeather is constantly pulling in data, providing predictions, information, using weather maps, etc. If you're on Netflix or something similar, you are constantly getting updated recommendation algorithms that's pulling in information about what you have watched before and what others similar to you have watched before, and then making decisions for you kind of on your behalf. Google Maps does an incredible job at trying to map routes, update them based on traffic, based on your preferences, et cetera. And in the healthcare space, we see innovations related to AI and data science constantly in trying to, how do we interact with our stakeholders, how we interact with people who need healthcare, right? But also providers. How can we connect providers with more information more easily so that we can provide a really personalized experience to support anyone on their individual healthcare journey? And one of the things that we think about is I get asked this all the time, like, okay, so I hear data science and AI. What is data science versus AI? I like to think of it in the following way. So data science, they do a lot of similar things. They overlap, as you can see in some of the diagrams below, but I'm looking to extract signals and meaning from data. I'm going to use a wide range of computational and statistical tools, and I'm also going to pull in domain context. So when I solve a public health problem using data science, it's very important for me to have public health professionals. That could be nurses, it could be physicians, it could be insurance providers, whatever the context of the problem is. I need to have domain expertise embedded and incorporated into my solution. For artificial intelligence, we're really trying to use technology as well as those computational and statistical tools to understand human needs in order to help make related decisions and perform tasks. So AI is trying to mimic, right, what a human would do in order to help support a human. So we have this famous quote from Turing: if a machine can have a conversation with a human and the human can't distinguish whether they're conversing with a human or a machine, then the machine has demonstrated human intelligence. This was a quote from decades ago, but we're starting to see this as people engage with generative AI tools. So I have two different diagrams on the bottom. There's not kind of one agreed upon definition as to how these areas all interact. What I like about the one on the left that comes from an article written by Duke, looking at using advanced machine learning and AI tools in surgery, is that we have deep learning, which is a set of tools, an example set of tools involved in machine learning. Both of those things are involved in artificial intelligence. I'm going to use computational models that use lots and lots of data to try to make predictions like humans would, or do decisions, perform tasks like humans would. And data science and statistics overlaps with that, where sometimes we're using more statistics and sometimes we're using more machine learning, but they interact with each other. The one quibble I have with the graph on the left is that regression analysis is inside statistics and data science, but not overlapping into machine learning and deep learning. And it's pretty much all of these algorithms are essentially based on some type of regression models. So I would pull that circle over a little bit. I also have another graph on the right that is a slightly different viewpoint from a company called Correlation One that we have worked with in the past. But what I like about this is it's really thinking about like the populations. It's everyone, the whole population should be learning some data literacy. And so the skills involved there are communicating results, dashboards, data visualization, and summary statistics. And then inside data literacy, right, we're going to have a smaller population that is going to be focusing on using data analysis. So thinking about exploratory data analysis, maybe I'm testing hypothesis, maybe I'm running t-tests or some regression models. I'm looking at p-values and thinking about statistical inference. And maybe I'm doing some more complicated cohorts analysis. And when I head into data science, which is even a smaller proportion, They're going to be doing a lot of the statistical and computational modeling. And then AI is even a tool that could be used inside data science. So maybe I'm trying to predict a particular weather pattern, or I'm trying to optimize some sort of like agricultural problem where I'm thinking about how to allocate resources, how to, where should I invest money? What kinds of supplies do I need? That's a data science problem, but I might use an AI tool to help me solve that problem, right? So I'm going to have a small group of people working on AI, slightly larger people doing data science, the bigger population doing data analysis, and the entire population is going to need some kind of data literacy background. Now, we're advocates of, and you heard Norm mention this a few times, human in the loop AI. So when we think about doing working with AI tools, we think about doing a responsible AI with humans in the loop. We don't have a relationship to disclose with this this company that generated this graphic. I just like this graphic to use. So for example, if you can see my mouse, I've got this AI model, some AI tool that's going to make like a decision for me, right? It's going to give me an output or results and make a decision, but it's not just that, it's a whole loop. So I'm going to start with a data set down in the lower left, and I'm going to think about like, how do I optimize the data, the training data that are going to be used in this AI model? So it's not just letting someone else choose the data for me. I'm picking the right data sets. I'm making choices. I'm optimizing it, thinking about data cleaning, data quality, et cetera. Once I think the data set is fit for use, then I'm passing it into the AI model and I'm getting output back out, and then I'm correcting it as the human. I'm using critical thinking skills to decide whether or not this AI has given me results I can use or made appropriate decisions. And I might go back and forth with the model, making some tweaks. Eventually, I validate, I feel good about that output and the tweaks I've made. And then as the system outputs that as my final answer, that's kind of informing the next time that I'm going to go through this. So the AI tool or the AI system is remembering the tweaks I made, the questions I asked back, the slight perturbations or changes that I did so that it can improve its performance the next time. But a human is always checking all of these phases. We're not just kind of letting the AI run without humans being involved. So an example of that you may all have seen, and one that's kind of very personal to me and my family right now, is deep learning based medical image analysis. So this is something that we see quite often in the medical field now, that they are using machine learning AI tools to scan x-rays and kind of highlight or identify areas of whatever area is being scanned, if it's the brain, if it's the bones, if it's, say, an ultrasound, to kind of identify areas that need a closer look. So this could be, you know, an automatic decision that's being passed to, say, another phase. It's going to a radiologist or it's going to somewhere else. It's also a tool that physicians are able to use live. So I recently, the last few months, had a family member who was getting some cancer treatment, and they've been constantly receiving scans. And there's an amazing amount of machine learning, deep learning AI behind the scenes. But every single time a doctor is in the room using the tool and talking to my family and engaging with the results. So if something's not clear, the physician is working with the family and working with the AI system all at the same time. And that's really where we've kind of seen like the biggest gain, is being able to have these AI support tools, but a human is still in the loop, like making those connections for the patients. Another example of this is, yeah, 3D print. Yeah, a little bit. So we have a comment of 3D printing for surgeries. Yeah, where it's able to do kind of an amazingly detailed image analysis, and it kind of can swing in different ways. So you can see different slices and cuts, so to speak. No pun intended. But there's always somebody there helping us understand what we're looking at. We also see AI really changing how we get a job. And this is in the economies that we've had for the last few years, particularly this year. This is a topic very much at the forefront of people's minds. So the recruiting process and the candidate experience when people are trying to acquire jobs have significantly changed. Not just in the last 30 years, as and I've borrowed this table from a faculty member in our department who's an expert in this space, but even in the last, say, like 5 to 6 years. So today, when people think about talent acquisition, they're using AI tools to provide advantages for the company's hiring process. So, for example, people are uploading resumes into systems, and the AI is using resume parsers to scan applications for keywords, for qualifications and experiences. So, this is kind of a type of automated screening that's happening. And then the AI system is passing resumes that match through to the human recruiters. This is very cost effective for the companies. It decreases the time spent scanning documents, which allows them to spend more time on onboard and training. And they also use automated tools like chat assistants and resume screeners to help candidates move through, which is supposed to improve the candidate experience. One of the big downside there is, though, if the resume is not well designed or tailored for those automated screening systems, they don't get through. So we spend a lot of time now trying to understand how those AI systems are analyzing the resumes so that we can help people, students, et cetera, design their resumes specifically for that. That is completely different than what we did even just a few years ago when we were helping people students put together their resumes and CVs. It has very much changed how we view the job process. Now, people are submitting all kinds of applications online. Getting a 5% hit rate back is actually considered pretty good. And then a resume screener is the research shows that it looks at the resume, for something like under a minute after the AI algorithm has filtered it, for it then to move on to the next phase. So that's how much the resume screeners, the humans, are relying on the AI filters to get them the right resumes. So we spend a lot of time in that space. So it's another example of how the humans and AI are working together. And these days, when people think of AI, they often think of generative AI or Gen AI. And so the most common one that people think about is ChatGPT, which was released by OpenAI. When it was released, it grew to 1 million users in 5 days. And then within 2 months, had over 100 million monthly active users. So this is not the only Gen AI app, right, that you can use. This was just kind of the first one to hit the public consciousness. And it uses a large language model, which is just essentially a predictive model based on a very large, very, very large collection of labeled public text. And so when you're using it, you're typing in a query, it's searching for relevant text. If you're asking about, like, help me design a recipe, help me identify the closest bookstore, help me work through this medical diagnosis, whatever it is, it has to find the relevant text and summarize it appropriately. And essentially, it's doing a prediction. It's a prediction every time you query Gen AI. It's predicting what kind of response you're interested in. What is the most likely response? So, for example, if you're asking a question about apples, it has to figure out if you're thinking about recipes or if you're thinking about Apple, the company, and the equipment that it makes. So it does that based on the types of words that you enter into the prompts. So its goal is to create new content based on what it's learned from old content. One of the pushbacks and problem areas we're seeing with these tools is that they tend to return very common patterns. They tend to kind of regress to the mean, to the middle, rather than find distinct, unusual information. And sometimes in research or sometimes in business problems, we don't really want the same generic solution for every single scenario. We're actually very interested in the distinct, the unusual, the extra kind of outlier, or like the secret sauce, so to speak. So we have to figure out how to use these tools to help us make connections that we didn't know before. And so sometimes there are different ways we can connect with those tools to help us with that. But what Gen AI is really good at is helping you create starter drafts or generate ideas. And so when we teach a lot of workshops or when we do a lot of research on Gen AI and how it works, we think about prompt engineering, the types of details and context that we provide. We think about how people update their information or react with the initial answers. We always support people asking for citations in order to verify that sources are accurate and reliable. We have quite a few research projects going on now to think about the reliability of the answers that we get back. I actually just graded some research proposals 2 nights ago that were all about trying to use Gen AI to understand different voices. So for example, does Gen AI do a good job at speaking or returning information in the voice or the lived experience of different kinds of occupations or different subpopulations? This is really important. Like, what is the voice that Gen AI is returning? And how can we make sure that it's tailored for particular circumstances and for particular groups of people? The thing that we always are cautioning people about is it's possible to engineer harmful or not helpful answers through the use of Gen AI. And so it could be used by bad actors. There are built-in guardrails in some cases that will intervene, but this is something that we're very active, the community is very actively researching and trying to solve, trying to mitigate that problem. So I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but yes, so I apologize. I'm pausing because there was a relevant question for that previous slide. So the question about, can voice include a specific cultural perspective like Navajo? Yes, that is something that we want these AI tools to do. Now, do they? That's an open research question that I think would be a great to be part of the dialogue for today, because there's bias. There can be bias in these Gen AI tools that are based on kind of the data sets, the training data sets that are being used. So, and I'll get to that slide in just a second. Thank you for the question. So these next two slides, research is starting to come out, kind of taxonomies of what is a good prompt or what is a bad prompt, what kind of level of detail you need to provide in order to get the right kind of information that you need back from these tools. So I'll just flash that this is one particular research article, and I'm very happy to share these slides. Norm can send them to the community that's at this forum. About the kind of the different levels. And we also see tools being created to help the general public think through, how would I structure a question or a prompt in order to try to get the answers back that I need. So more and more structure is being put into how can we help people use these things in a meaningful way that gets them the information that they want. We also can use generative AI to do something called deep research, where there's more advanced functionality that helps you actually deliver more of a research plan. So not just things like, like my 10-year-old daughter asked Google the other day where the closest Benson Boone concert is. And I was like, okay, that's one way to use Gen AI, but that's not a detailed research plan, right? That she just wanted a fact to come back. But if you're interested in a particular topic, doing a deep dive, you can use this functionality to give you back a planning phase. It will research the web and look in different areas for you, find different resources, but it also shows you the thought process. It talks to you while it's doing the research plan, so you can see how it made its decisions and where it found its information, what kind of next steps are necessary. So what that's happening there is it's actually the LLMs are interacting with search engine tools. That's one way to think about it. So for example, instead of me going into Google or other search engines or say PubMed or other large databases to search for information, I'm asking Gen AI to do that for me. So in the interest of time, because I know Norm is trying to stay on schedule, I'll just say in these slides, there is a video. It's a few minutes, but I just included it so we could send it around, of a deep research task. This tends to take longer. So I'm going to let you all look at these slides and kind of run that Gen AI if you're interested in the deep research on your own time. So I'll just move on from there, but it talks to you. So I'm not going to run the whole thing, but so we're going to go to deep research. We're just picked Google Gemini because it's one that's free and available. There's nothing to disclose here. And this is one of our AI-SDM research fellows trying to demonstrate how you do a report on the short-term and long-term effects of smoking, just as an illustrative example. So you can see it takes a while. I'm going to move it kind of down a little bit so you can see on one side it's creating the research, and on the other side it's trying to tell me what it's doing. It's researching 25 websites, it's analyzing results, etc. Okay, so how can this go wrong? If we kind of come to our last 10 minutes here. Well, AI is not perfect. It's not great. This is a tool that's now more ubiquitous. It's available to the public, which is why, even though we've seen several AI cycles of boom and kind of the winter and boom and the winter, This one feels a little bit different because it is so accessible to the general public. And the things that we need to think about or worry about is we have hallucinations, for example. So content that gets created in return that sounds right. It looks so right, but it's actually very wrong. So it's factually incorrect or misleading. We spend quite a bit of time teaching people how to use tools and how to critically think about them and analyze them. We also spend a lot of time worrying and doing research on safety. So thinking about trying to help the public understand that when they provide personal information into some of these tools, if they're public, that information is now staying with the tool and being used to improve their models and their services. And so we always advocate that people never put sensitive or personal details into the prompts without fully understanding how the tool uses your data. And that's part of our education and workforce development projects that Norm referenced a little bit in the opening slides. And you have several education experts. Heather, I believe, is there, as long with others. I'm sorry, I can't remember who, the entire team that's there, but they'll talk to you a little bit more about some of the education projects that we're doing this on. Yeah. All right, so you also think about bias, and I appreciated the previous question in the chat because these answers are going, the performance of this are based on the text and the documents and the data that are used to build the LLM if I'm thinking about generative AI, or any of the predictive models if I'm thinking about, for example, that healthcare scanning the brain, thinking about like the x-rays and whatnot. And that can go wrong in several different ways. So a very famous example in 2018 was that Amazon had a hiring algorithm that had very strong bias because it was using previous hiring data that had been at the time largely male dominated. And so their hiring tool that they used, because so many men had been hired previously, the tool was automatically penalizing resumes that made reference to women through, for example, students from all women's colleges and things like that. So this is an example of the bias, right? If these tools are built on only data from a certain population, then it's going to give answers and predictions and outputs that are based on that particular population. So to the chat question, thinking about like that cultural perspective, it's incredibly important that we think about how we can pull those different cultural perspectives into our data sets, our training, our design of these AI systems so that they can best support that perspective. And that leads us to some important questions that I know we'll be talking about in the rest of the forum, thinking about data sovereignty. So who owns your own data? Do you own data that's about you or about your community? And then how do you give permission for that data to be used? If the data about you, and then the problem is how does that impact the results? So for example, if we opt out of a particular, we don't include data sets that are about our particular community, then the AI system and the models won't reflect our community. But if we're going to opt in and give our data and give permission for our data to be used, we need to understand how it's being used. We need to understand if it's being stored, how it's being safeguarded. It's very important that we, have data sovereignty over our lives. And one research area that might be of interest to the dialogue for the forum is something called data attribution or credit. So people are trying to develop models to understand how maybe a single data point or a small set of data or a large set of data, what's the influence of that particular set of data in the AI system? And some of that is about understanding biases, and some of it is about even ideas about compensation or copyright. So for example, if a famous book has been scanned and put into the AI system and then used, they're trying to think about how important that book was to the use of AI. And then, for example, you could pay people for their copyright, right? For their use of their product inside the AI tool. So that's a really active area of interest that I thought this community might be interested in. We also have work being done on, you have to think about sensitive or confidential topics. And OpenAI, the company that released ChatGPT, there's several recent lawsuits pending right now related to sort of teens and adolescents and using ChatGPT with respect to topics for mental health and well-being. And so we have several, studies that are starting to come out. As these tools are being released, we're learning more and more about them as people are using them, and kinds of what sorts of design features or guardrails or guidelines do we need to be using in order to help support people in their use. Of course, we're looking for positive, supportive outcomes rather than harmful thinking or negative outcomes in this particular case. There's also environmental concerns. This is an enormous question on everybody's minds. We just hosted an AI and Energy Summit at Carnegie Mellon on Wednesday, where we were thinking very heavily about what does it mean for our energy grids, our infrastructure, our local communities, the environmental impact, et cetera, as data centers are being built to help support AI. Those can require or use non-trivial resources and can heavily impact the surrounding areas. I'm referencing two news stories here, where one was talking about pollution that's created, or, for example, water use, that local wells are running dry because the data center is using so much water. There's also just kind of the size of these facilities. You think about dust, light, noise pollution. And then the big question on everybody's mind is power demands. So right now, these AI queries, and this will, hopefully this will change in the next few years, but these AI queries can consume 30 times more power than standard web searches. And that's just, we can't support it. The New York Times had a couple of articles this week about the expected energy use. And that's over by 2028, say, if people continue to use Gen AI, for example, to do searches like where's the closest Benson Boone concert, when that could have been used a completely different way. And we're seeing electricity prices. I'm sure this is a topic in New Mexico as well. We're seeing energy and electricity prices are starting to rise, and they're rising in an inequitable way, depending on where people are geographically and the kinds of natural resources they have around them. So that's going to be a massive topic in the next few years. So I know we're right on time. So I'll just mention, we have, Norm mentioned our focus on AI education and us developing degrees. We're also very focused on the public and workforce, and trying to build an AI capable workforce that maybe isn't that data literacy, AI literacy framework. One of the massive obstacles that we face are that people are not super jazzed about AI. So more and more studies are coming out that they're concerned about AI. And even though they might be using it on their phones or in their computers or kind of in their daily lives, but they don't trust it. It's not transparent. They're highly concerned about it. People believe AI will worsen creative thinking and affect our meaningful relationships with other people. And so this is something that we're working through. They're starting to do more and more research studies on how AI can be used in learning environments, and trying to understand how can AI support learning. Turns out right now AI is more likely to create distracting images if you're using it to build images. So for example, the graph on the right is a break-even analysis. This is kind of a standard business econ graph. And when AI, ChatGPT, was asked to create a break-even analysis, it created the graph on the left, which could not be more distracting, right? If you think about students learning break-even analysis, the one on the right is far better than the one on the left in terms of like an educational tool. All right. Okay. And, the College Board and other educational organizations are starting to write guidance. We still haven't gotten this figured out yet, but we're moving in that direction. I know at Carnegie Mellon, we are completely rethinking our policies for how AI can be used in all of our disciplines, not just, say, computer science. So, they're starting to post different guidelines and policies, and I'm sure these will evolve over the next few years as AI use evolves as well. All right, so Norm already talked to you about our degrees. We also do quite a lot with the public. We build programs for them. I'll skip through that, and I'll just finish on, if you're not familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, this is kind of the trajectory that we see with all kind of new technologies. We get some new technology. We're super excited about it. It's going to take over the world. We're going to change everything. And that's the peak of inflated expectations. And then it doesn't work as well as we think, and we drop into disillusionment. before we kind of say, okay, this is going to work, we need to rethink the products, and we finally get to a place where these things are part of our daily lives. So all of this, the point is, all of this takes time. I'll say that this is the cycle that was put together for last year, 2024. And you'll see on the far right, computer vision is something that we understand very well now, and it's already moved into the plateau of productivity. But most of the things that are part of AI, we're kind of heading into that like trough of disillusionment. And this morning I found they've released their 2025 one. And the thing they've zoomed in on is that generative AI and edge AI, these types of new things, they're kind of heading, they're in the trough right now. People are sort of very nervous about them. But that what that does mean is that we're going to hopefully make a lot of progress over the next few years and find use cases in which things work really well and double down on making sure that these products work for the people and the communities around us. So we hopefully can get to a plateau of productivity for these. This is just one I like because it's funny because it lands on robot housekeepers. And I'll tell you right now, if I had somebody cleaning my house, you know, a robot housekeeper, I would fully embrace that. That would be great. But I'll just stop with just kind of a comment that like one of the things we have learned with AI, and I hopefully this is helpful for your dialogue this afternoon or this morning. In an effort to make AI and tech easier for people, it's actually becoming less transparent and trustworthy. And so it's very, people try to build degrees and courses for, they think for the tech students and the computer science students, but really we need AI and data science for everyone. We really need to focus on AI and data literacy. And one of the best ways we can do that is think about the entire ecosystem and work together across disciplines so that we have all different kinds of perspectives, including cultural and community perspectives in the room when we're developing these kind of content. And that also involves participatory design. So anytime that we are designing a program, designing a course, designing a tool, we need to be involving the stakeholders and the communities and their cultural perspectives as part of that design process. And I'll stop right there. And thank you very much. And hopefully this got some wheels turning for some ideas to continue talking about for the rest of the forum. And again, I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I do wish you the best for the next few hours. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or thoughts. Thank you so much.